first time, my name is Dr. Carol Chakua. I am a mom, a psychologist, and a parent coach. I'm also the CEO of Stawi Camp for Wellbeing. What we do at Stawi Camp is we focus on curating emotional wellness and parenting programs for children and their parents. Previously, I have been practicing actively as a therapist, but I no longer practice actively as a therapist. I have shifted my focus more to what we call psychoeducation. And there we just break down information surrounding mental health, human behavior, and make it accessible to everybody. Okay, and so I do work with a huge network of therapists and psychologists who are actively practicing, and Pauline is one of them. I do send clients to her as well. And what we try to do in Stawi, our vision is a community. What we visualize is a community of caring adults, committed with a deep commitment to creating spaces for all kinds of children to thrive. And so that is why we bring these gatherings together, so that the adults that come, the 154 of us, are able to get the information that they need to be able to provide the right kind of environment. Adults who are committed, and even our panelists are people that we have engaged with in different forums, and we really totally trust where they are in terms of this commitment. They share this vision at Stawi. And so let me take a moment to introduce our first panelist, who is Pauline. Pauline Gekanga is a Christian. She's a wife, a mother of two, and a homeschooling parent. She's also a certified mediator, a counselor, and an adoption advocate. She does a lot of engagements, outreach engagements, speaking engagements, trainings in organizations and different forums. And her special areas of specialization is in individual matters, relationships, premarital and post-marriage and family. And she is at Pan-African Christian University, almost completing her master's studies in marriage and family therapy. So let's take a moment and just welcome Pauline. Let's see the emojis. We have so many ways of celebrating people, even online. So just take a moment and just celebrate her and welcome her as I introduce our next panelist, who is Dr. Francisca Mbutitia. Dr. Francisca is a mentor and a mental health researcher. She's a senior lecturer at Moi University. She is a colleague of mine, so we interact in different spaces as well. And she's also a former high school deputy principal, so she's really been in that space of working with adolescents, and now currently working with young adults and still adolescents, because our university students still fall under the category of adolescents. She's also the national secretary of the Kenya Guidance and Counseling and Guidance Counselors and Psychologists Association. I hope I've said it right, Francisca, you'll correct me. She's the national secretary, very, very deeply involved in areas around quality education for orphans and vulnerable children. And she's also very interested in Christian counseling. She's deeply published in areas around mental wellness, psychosocial stressors and support, trauma in children and adolescents. And she will give us some insights about some of the research that she has been doing and what is really going on in that space. Remember, today we are talking about setting our children up to thrive, not just in school, but beyond. And we know it starts from the early years. Mr. Clifford, before I go to Mr. Cliff, just take a moment and celebrate Dr. Francisca. I don't know if it's me, but I'm not seeing any emojis. I'm hoping they are there. Okay. But because I have many, many screens up, I might not be able to see that. But let's take a moment and celebrate Dr. Francisca. Mr. Clifford Olwach is currently the principal of Regis School Runda. He's also a published author and has over 30 years teaching across diverse populations. And I must also say he was once my son's teacher. My son is now in year 9 and has never forgotten Mr. Cliff. There was a bit of tears when you had to leave our school. So we miss you, Mr. Cliff. And then he's also the author of several books, children's books, course books, and a book called A Perfect Score. And I would recommend this book to everyone. It is so humorous. Okay, very, very humorous accounts of school and his experiences. He's also a script writer and drama director and the founder of Homeless of Nairobi. And I'm sure we'll be able to hear a little bit more about all that you do in that space. So karibuni sana. Please let's welcome Mr. Cliff with those good emojis. Karibuni. And so let us just dig right into the conversation. I'm also trying to see where where Francisca is. I don't know if it's my screen here, but yes, there you go. Now let me see if I can spotlight you. Oh, are we already spotlighted? Spotlit, is it is it spotlit or spotlighted? All right. So in a world where, you know, things might seem very, very hopeless, and we have statistics telling us that mental health rates, mental health issues, statistics, they are skyrocketing. We have adolescents and teens who are struggling all around, and we don't have a lot of we feel like we don't have a lot of positive role models, because the role models our children have out here are very seemingly, you know, not very positive, and we are worried that our children are listening to other voices out there and we are losing our voice of influence. And so the question becomes, how do I become a voice of influence in my child's life? How do I create an environment for my child to thrive? And so I just want us to take one round. We're starting with Pauline and then going to Mr. Cliff and going to Francisca. And the first question is, what drives what you do? So let's start with Pauline, what you do and what drives it.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Caro, for having me. It's really nice to be here. So I deal a lot with individuals and families and couples. So, and I must say, I started that when I was way young. Actually, when I was probably just before high school, and I would just find myself talking to, you know, to people who are in families, to ladies who are married, and finding out how is their family. I would get concerned when I saw unhappy families. So I would talk to people, you know, even in church. I remember I was because I grew up, my dad was a pastor. So I would see some people very unhappy. Then maybe I hear somebody, they're not going, you know, they're not doing well. They're having disagreements. So I would go to talk to them and encourage them. So I must say, whatever I do, I feel that that's my life assignment. So what I do is I work with people who are going through crises in their relationships. That is pre-marriage and post-marriage. Also individuals who are dating, so much around relationships. I saw a lot of intentionality from my parents, and especially my father, to be in a happy relationship at home. And so when I noted that it was not usual all the time for all, I felt an urge and desire that I would like to be working with families, and because families should be happy. I always felt that families needed to be happy, couples needed to be happy, and all they needed to do is to be intentional. So for me, it is more, why I do is the urge, the desire. I feel God created me to do that. Let me just say that. I feel that is my life's purpose, to work with people who are going through crisis in relationships and to help them navigate well. Of course, navigating does not always mean that the relationships work. There are people we work with, or I work with, and they are probably exiting a relationship, maybe before marriage or even in marriage, because it completely hasn't worked. So just help them navigating, even as they desire, when they decide to leave, but in a healthy way. So it's either way, but to help them navigate those seasons of their life. So I am around relationships. Yeah.
Thank you, thank you. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how that plays out now as a homeschooling mom, and how you're creating that space as well. Thank you for that. Mr. Cliff.
Thank you very much, Carol. I don't know. So it's a very multifaceted question, I don't know which direction to take. But let me just say, when I was 18 or 19, my mentor at that time, the late Santiago, pointed me towards the direction of teaching when I was still trying to find out the best profession to go into. And that time, accounts and CPA was a rave, and everyone was going to CPA, and there was money over there. So he uttered those prophetic words that I've never forgotten. He says, "No, forget about accounts. You are a born teacher. And not only a born teacher, but you're a teacher of kids. That is your happy space." I'll never forget. I mean, he didn't put it in that way, but he said, if you want to be rich, go into accountancy. Sorry, no offense to accountants, but said, if you want to be happy, go into teaching. And that time I was 18, 19, and I was kind of word. I ended up in teaching, and 33 years later, I can say he was spot on. I've not regretted. So what keeps me driving is exactly what Pauline said. It's just to get the kids happy. There's so many broken adults, but they're broken because of broken kids. So for me, is to ensure that whichever kids that I'm dealing with, whether they are on the streets or off the streets, with Regis School Runda, or all the school that I've been to, Premier Academy, it's just one fundamental thing, is that I want the kids happy. So at Regis, we have this slogan, the happiness index. And it's something that we're driving. You want a happy community, you want happy kids, you want happy workers, you want happy teachers, happy drivers. It might sound like a mirage, but yes, that's what drives me. Get the kids to be happy. Thank you.
Thank you. And that is actually very achievable. And I have seen it play out even in the posts, not only even with the kids, but even the teachers, the happy teachers. I see that. Sometimes the focus is so much on the children, on the parents, but the teachers are sort of pushed on the side, but I actually see how engaging the teachers are in your school as well. And I think for me, one thing that really stands out for me, even from your story, is there's an adult who called out something as not even when you were 6-year-old or 8-year-old, but as late as later. Because sometimes we say at certain age, it's too late to influence. But you were 18, 19, and someone spoke something into you that really went deep. And that speaks a lot into the kind of relationship that teacher had with you and how it inspired you to be. And so right off, I think what we're saying, it's never too late to influence. Some of us are here with older children and wondering where to start. It's never too late to influence. I'm sure there's more stories to that have to do with your background and everything, but I'm really big on one stable adult. If every adult committed to showing up as the one stable adult, our children would thrive, even if the system is broken. And I know that there are so many things we can share about that, where you go against the system, but you're able to be that one stable adult. Thank you for sharing. And let me go to Francisca, Dr. Francisca. What drives what you do?
Good evening. Yeah, for me, I am a social person. And social people are people who like manipulating people to be able to achieve something. That is who I am. And so I really like working with children, because I know when children have the right foundation, then the issues that we're addressing in the society are likely not to be there. So when we talk about training the children the way they should go, that's exactly what I believe in doing. That a child gets the right training, and they get to know who they are, they understand their strengths, their abilities, and where they want to go. And I'm telling you, even when they get a teenage, then those children will not give you trouble. Young adults will not give you trouble, because they are children who are really, really focused. And so people keep on wondering, why do you work with children and you're teaching grown-ups? I tell them because I know the children are the foundation of every society. When they are well grounded, when they become young adults, then when they become adults, they make the right choices, and actually the society become very, very peaceful, and everyone becomes a functional individual. That's what drives me. For the future of this society, then the children have to be trained the way they should go. And that's what makes me moving, keeps me moving. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. And your passion for flows not only with the young adults, because I've interacted with you as you interact. I mean, not only with the children, but I've interacted with you as you interact with the young adults. And I see how much you advocate for them, even at whatever age and from the different backgrounds. So I celebrate you for the work that you are doing. So let's go back now. We are talking about thriving, and I don't know how thriving looks like for you, Pauline, who is a homeschooling mom. I don't know if I'm told that you can't get me clearly. Is it me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me okay? All right, so Mercy, maybe you need to check your settings. You might want to maybe even leave and come back. Sometimes that helps, but just go ahead and do that. So what does, as a homeschooling mom, how does thriving look for you, look like for you as you're raising your children?
Thriving for me is, giving the child, we have 2 children, giving the children an environment where they can thrive, or where they can be all that they were created to be. I believe so much so that everybody, and I began by saying my life's assignment, that everybody has an assignment. I think I'm so strong about that because I think we've dropped Carol. I believe strongly about that because when I went through school, I struggled through school academically. But there was my dad kept telling me that, kept affirming me, even days when I would be told to go back with my parents because I hadn't done well. That time my dad would do for me shopping, affirm me, tell me, yes, you can, hug on me. My dad is the late, but I really talk about him because I always say, if it was not my dad affirming me, even when I was not doing well academically, I would not be what I am doing today. At times I look at it and I'm speaking, I'm doing speaking engagements, I'm running my own practice, and I know it took my dad, because if it was academics, you've just heard that I'm doing my master's. Somebody of the level I was at would not have done, will probably have been dismissed. So for me, thriving is when you create the right environment around, that is the parents, what you allow them to do. I believe so much in the talent, because everybody has a talent. So for me, even when we homeschool our children, we are very keen on our children's talents, and we spend a lot of time in them because we know that talent, God would use it even to give them profit, passion, to turn their passion into profit. God has given you whatever he has created you with to help you for a living. So for me, thriving is creating that environment with what they are good at, not forcing. Of course, they cannot do without education. Not every child is endowed with academics. But of course, we will let them do as much as they can. One of them is very academic, actually. The other one is more geared towards their talent. But we allow them to thrive in everything they can without comparing them, or without saying, what we were told, soma kwa bidii kupata kazi mzuri sana. We tell them, even with your talent, because God has in them what they need for life. So that for me is thriving. It's not being a what or a what. It is being what God created them to be. If it is to be a tennis coach, if that is what they want to do, we will give them the environment to be a tennis coach. And we will be so proud of them because we will know that is what God put in them. We only need to encourage them in that space. So we are very keen on not putting them in our way or wanting them to be a particular. We keep asking God, so what direction now? What direction now? So for me, that is thriving. It's not being a particular profession, but it's being all that you see, there's a place that says that things are like deep waters, but a person of understanding withdraw them out. So we are keen to draw out what is in them. So for me, that person, if we are able to do that and allow them to do all that they can and put them in whatever they want to do, and then they narrow down to what, for me, that is thriving. Yeah.
Thank you. Speaking into intentionality and finding what they're good at and funding that and encouraging that. Okay, so thank you for that. And I'm sure you will unpack a little bit more about how that plays out, like in an everyday basis as a homeschooling mom, because I'm sure there are also homeschooling moms and parents represented here as well. But also we don't want to and say there's a way of thriving for homeschooling mom, and there's a way of thriving for homeschoolers and for regular schoolers. So for that, I just want to find out from Mr. Cliff how thriving looks like. You have taught across the different socio-economic divides, and you are also a philanthropist, and you do a lot of work at the slums, and then so just different spaces. You are very expansive in your experience as you interact with children. What are some of the things, how can you describe thriving across the different populations and demographics?
Okay, thank you very much, Carol. I mean, I have got so much to share. I don't even know which one to pick and which one to leave out. So let me pick on two examples. One is personal with the family about thriving. I would say, you know, that thriving is when the children start emulating what you do, whether it's your own students or your students, your children, relatives. So two examples I'll give over here. I started the feeding program for street boys November 2014. It's going to be 9 years now. And we used to sit as a family, prepare the bread and milk, pack the food, and in the evening at 7 o'clock, I would go and give out the food. So it became like a family get together, kind of everyone was involved, but we were there. And this continued for a very long time until now we kind of upgraded from bread and milk to cooking for them. I didn't ask anyone to come and help me, but they'll just see that I'm doing it and they would come and help into it. Now, fast forward about 2 years ago, we moved into a neighborhood, and the neighborhood was infested with stray cats. I don't know how they are. I mean, at night, they're making noise and they break into your kitchen. And in the WhatsApp group, people are complaining, nuisance, get KCA, and whatever kind of thing. Then my younger daughter, Lisa, who's now second year at USIU, she did then think about, she said, okay, fine, let me start feeding them, kind of. So she started a feeding program for stray cats. Now I'm feeding street boys, she's feeding stray cats. And the noises stopped, the breaking into people's houses stopped. And now every evening we had a feeding program going on for the cats, almost 15, 20 of them. Of course, she went further, she contacted some vets, and they went and rescued some of them, got them neutered so that they cannot just multiply and multiply and multiply. And I looked and said, that's thriving. That is where you say, okay. So that's the first example. The second example, which I've used a number of times, and it also appears in my book, is the story of Dr. Dilraj Sokhi, who's now a neurosurgeon at the CAN. And for 12 years, from standard 1 to form 4, Dilraj was top of his class, academics, top, and they got all the accolades. And it was like he was the envy of every parent, I wish, So he went to the UK, studied for his medicine, practiced there, then came back to Kenya. And when we had the 25th anniversary for his class, he called me and said, I'm going to do something strange. And I asked him, what? He said, I'm going to return, we call it the pennant. I'm going to return 2 of my pennants, and I want to award them to people I feel were worthier recipients than I am. I said, okay, why is that? He said, okay, I was academic, but that was it. That was the only thing I was. Then he counted all other people who were academic plus other things. Said those people deserved it better than I did. However, the system at that time, I don't know how it is now, did not recognize an all-rounder. Just be the best student in this class. Or whatever. And so when we had the reunion, Dillard said, okay, guys, I've come back with 2 pennants and I would like to give them to the 2 wealthier people than I was. And he gave them to 2 of the guys who actually were sportsmen and academics, drama, everything. They were all over. And then he said, I grew up admiring these guys. I wish I could be half of what they were. And these guys were like, we grew up admiring you. We wish you were, kind of. And I said, now, when someone has gone through school and has got the temerity to come back and say, right, not splatter your wall and say, I am the greatest, this is what I want, nobody beat me and whatever. He has the humility to come back and say, hey, you guys, you're wrong. And I'm giving back this. I'm not returning them. I'm giving them to the guys who deserve it. Now, you ask me, I'll tell you, that's trying full cycle. They come back. Of course, there are more examples which I'll share as we move along, but I thought that I'll pick on those 2. Thank you.
Wow, thank you. That's a perspective we don't see a lot, the unique perspective of thriving in the sense of extending outside of yourself and seeing a need outside of yourself. And I know that even as we were doing the Menti here, there was a bit of that. We want our children to be independent, to be able to think for themselves. I love the example of your daughter feeding cats. Like how interesting is that you're feeding children and she's feeding cats. So much of you has poured into her, and I know it is, again, comes from your intentionality. And I think one of the thread that that keeps running, just from Pauline says, there was that your father was very influential in your life. You having been Mr. Cliff, having been influenced by a teacher, and then you also influencing your daughter that way, and that is what excites us here as TAWI, as we bring a community of adults, is like each one of us as an individual, you can be that one stable adult. And you may not, that's the thing, you may not see the results immediately. Okay, because I'm sure, Mr. Cliff, you probably had opportunities where she didn't even want to have anything to do with what it is you're doing, but you kept at it. You kept at it. And what we say at TAWI is you don't judge your parenting by what you see today. You don't judge your parenting by the harvest that you're seeing today, but you judge the parenting by the seeds you are sowing today. Okay, and they will bear fruit over time. So my challenge to each one of us here is, what seed are you planting today? And if you are not aware, step back, breathe in and out, and you'll see that you're actually sowing seeds today. The 184 of us here are already sowing a seed of intentionality. If you don't see the results today, that's fine. Okay, you will be the Pauline who helps people in matters relationships in future, or maybe even when we're not able to see it. But focus on the seeds that you are planting today, and the same with what it is you're seeing many years down the line with your daughter. Francisca, I want to shift to the young adults at the university. I know you work with children and that excites you, but I also know that you are actually quite effective also with the young adults in how you influence them. And what are the unique challenges that young adults are experiencing that are, de-thriving them, if there's a word like that, or getting in the way of them thriving? What are those unique challenges that you have seen?
I really interact with these young people in the university. I strongly believe when I am teaching these young people, I'm not just the owner of knowledge. I always tell them that all of us possess knowledge and we want to share as we do the learning together. And we get to points where we really talk and we have serious conversations with them. And one major challenge that is really facing our young people is relationships. Relationship among themselves, of course, from our perspective, we understand at this age, they are between the ages of 18 and 40. That is where they are supposed to experience either intimacy or isolation. So they are very busy pursuing sexual relationships. And there is a lot of heartbreaks and things are not really working out. And some are even threatening each other. So the relationship issues are very, very serious among these young people. Not only among themselves, but even with the parents. They are not being truthful to their parents, and parents, again, on the other side, they're also becoming very hard on them. And as sometimes we talk, you hear them saying, like, parents have said, now you're in the university, you're supposed to fend for yourself. And the person who is worst hit is the boy child. Many parents find it very difficult to give pocket money to their boy children who are in colleges. It's like, you're big enough, you can fend for yourself, and so there you are. And this again now brings the problem of financial constraints, which again become another very serious problem. And you can see some of our girls, how they are trying to solve some of these problems is looking for the people they call the sponsors. So someone who can finance them so that they can be able to do what other girls are able to do. The boy child, some of them are going for cougars, some of them are, it depends on what the boy has as their values. You know, there are those who have no values. So for them looking for another woman to be able to sustain them while they are in the university, it is okay. Others may not, but they really live very stressed lives, and sometimes even sleeping without food, you know, so sharing their accommodation, and sometimes they don't even have enough of whatever. And then another very big challenge is peer pressure. That one is at another level when you get to the university. And it is so bad that many are not what they thought they would be anyway. Some have been brought up even in their faith, that is Christianity. They have been good members, but once they get into university, most of them do not know how to manage the freedom in the university. From a very tight and closed kind of an environment in high school, where the teacher makes sure that you wake up at this time, you go for preps this time, you do wherever you have to do. It is well structured. But once you get to the university, things are very, very different. Maybe I can share my experience with the first years who have just reported. They came this September, and they are so confused that they do not know. You know, they only know, like, you wake up, you go to your class, and the timetable is there. But now here we are with so many programs, and you have to learn how to get to know the timetable. You know where your venue is and when to be there. Sometimes you don't have a class a whole day. That one is, that's a very funny thing to a student who is coming from high school, you know, which is so enclosed. And again, then the parents' expectations, you know, some of them are actually pursuing courses that they never wanted to pursue, but they are doing it because the parents are said so. Others are like, in our Kenyan situation, the placement body, the COOPs, you ask them, why are you here? COOPs decided. So when COOPs decides, then are you going by the decision of the COOPs, or are you going by what? You see, so there are very many issues that are really happening around the children in the university. And so we are handling very many cases of drug and substance abuse, you know, because that's another very serious issue. And so when we are dealing with this, some are dropping out of school, some cannot go back home, so we are having very many challenges that the university students are facing. And we are hoping, like, as we move forward, we will be able to have, like, there are some universities where we have parents open days, where parents can be coming to the universities and find out what is happening to their children, because some of them even dropped off in second year, but you are still pumping in money, you are paying school fees, you are doing everything. You wait until graduation, then your child is not anywhere near the graduation list. So parents get very frustrated. They don't know what to do, but we want to say that we need to open up and allow the people, the parents, because they are serious stakeholders in our institution, to be able to come in and find out what is happening with their children, whether they are attending schools, can they find results, and what else is happening around there. That's where we are. Those are just a few of the challenges that you're facing in the university with the young adults.
Yeah,
Thank
you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Francisca. You know, we're looking at thriving across the different spaces, across the different ages, even across the different socio-economic divides. And we're just unpacking all of us so we can come together and speak. Keep going. Where do you have someone experience? How do we experience? Let me see what how do we see experience address the university issue pre them joining university? And Mr. Cliff is asking, what is the root cause of all the confusion at the uni? Again, to use your word, Mr. Cliff, multifaceted, right?
The power of God will touch them. That's why people
just have that muted. Thank you. It is multifaceted, and we're not even claiming we're here to give all the solutions and all the root causes. We're opening up a conversation that hopefully will glean one or two things, will inspire us one or two ways, so that we are able to pick a few things. And many of us here could be from different contexts, but I know that there's commonality around here. But I'm also interested to hear what we think the root causes are, even as I go back to you, Mr. Cliff, who let's ask just to address that question here that has been asked. How do we as parents address the issue pre their joining university? How does it look like? You also have a daughter at the university, as well as Francisca. Well, yes, let's go.
Okay, fine, good. I think it's, I was asking a rhetorical question, and it's one of the challenges that I've faced as well. And the root cause is actually when we say we are teaching subjects. I am teaching mathematics, I'm teaching chemistry, I'm teaching physics, I'm teaching English, I'm teaching Kiswahili. Nobody ever says that I'm teaching human beings, you know, kind of. So we lose the human being from the word go. But I've always told people that I teach human beings, you know, kind of. I teach blood and flesh and everything. And when I go into class, the first thing that I do is to look into everybody's eyes, you know, kind of. And I'll notice, you don't look happy, you know, kind of, something is wrong. You know, basically, it's a human component. And my lesson starts from outside. My lesson starts at the parking, you know, it does not start in the classroom. So by the time I'm going to class to teach, I'm teaching a friend, I'm teaching a buddy, I'm teaching, however young they are, they know me as Cliff. They don't know me as principal, you know, kind of. So by the time they're getting into university, the focus is so much on the grade and not the person. Nobody cares. Even your villagers, they raised millions of shillings or whatever to take you abroad or to take you to university, you know, kind of, right? So they expect success, but nobody bothers about how that success comes. So if we start focusing on the human being, we start being human with humans, and that's, I think, what well-being is about. Be human first, and then be a teacher. Be human first, and then be a mother. Be human first, and then be a doctor. You know, kind of be human. That to me is the root cause. Thank you.
Thank you for that. You're totally speaking my language there. You know, human first. And even as a parent, be human first to yourself, starting with yourself, and before you're a teacher. It's not easy, especially because the systems are so set to look at us as numbers. And therefore, by the time you get to the university or to those levels, you're already so desensitized from who you are as a person. And I don't know if these are some of the reasons for you, Pauline, that inspired you to homeschool. Can you tell us a little bit about your motivations around homeschooling and what drove you to that? What inspired you to that?
Oh, okay. Thank you, Dr. Now, let me first begin by saying homeschooling was my husband's idea when I did not understand what homeschooling is. That was even before we got married. And but I always say that choosing to homeschool is like choosing a school from another. I mean, every parent chooses a school for their, so it means all other schools are okay, but you have your reasons for choosing the particular one. So one of our main reasons was spending a lot of time with our children. We really wanted, I always say quality time comes from quantity time. At times we say we're having quality time with our children and maybe it's just a one day or maybe an afternoon on a Sunday, but we felt we wanted a lot of time with our children. We saw 18 years to be a very short time that we are given, because after 18 children go away to the university. So we wanted to have them to ourselves. So that also, and just to, my husband always said he wanted to be the one teaching them even matters of life. He's actually the primary homeschooler, so like with the children in class, and I homeschool the other activities that they do, so I take them and all that. So quality time, of course, we wanted to be the people who are they are learning from us, matters of life, teach them about God ourselves. We are Christians, so we wanted to do it ourselves. And so because there was that, he used to say that he wanted another way. He always used to ask, is there only going to school? There's no other way that people can learn knowledge by not being in a school away from the parents. So that's why when he researched and saw homeschooling, so we got into it. So we've homeschooled all through, and hopefully if God allowing us to high school, which we are headed. And yeah, so wanted to spend a lot of time with our children before they leave us, and to be the primary people who give them knowledge and teach them about God, who we believe in. And that's the reason why we chose. And of course, I think one of the things that we have to do very intentionally because of their social skills is we have been very intentional in making them be in groups. So they do different things, like the homeschool fraternity has a way they do activities together. So the region we are in, we do activities with other homeschoolers. They also do sports, so they are in a team. One of them plays tennis, so she has a team. The other one is a swimmer. So, and of course, like in church, they are involved. If there are plays being played, they play. So we do a lot of play dates as well. So we allow their friends to come over. So we have been very intentional on that, because we can't give them, we can't give them that. We can't be there. There's a place you can't, there's a relationship you can't be to your children, that they need their peers to be that relationship. So we are very careful on that. So that's the reason why we chose to homeschool.
Right, and that speaks into a lot of things there. Your intentionality, clarity about the values that you have, and then you make decisions that align with what it is that it is that you value. I want to go to Francisca and just ask now that some parents may not have that opportunity to homeschool, but then they still want to be able to connect with their children. And I know that you have done a lot of research in that space of adolescence and mental health, and you just recently, got funding to do something that it's very, very close to your heart in terms of just what are the what you call psychosocial issues? What are adolescents going through? Because sometimes we can get quite dismissive and say, they are just fragile, and they're falling apart too easily. But what's on the ground? What did you find on the ground that the gaps are? You're muted. You're muted.
Sorry, okay, thank you. I'm glad that I've been working with children, and we've been looking at how we can enhance psychosocial support and mental health of our children. So we went out there, we were doing research, we picked 5 counties in Kenya, and we were looking at the psychosocial issues that the children have. Under the psychosocial, we were looking at the physiological needs, do children have clothing? Do they have food? Do they have shelter? Are their health okay? Let me say mainly we were concerned because during COVID, there were very many things that happened. Parents lost their jobs. Some even had to relocate to, from towns to rurals. How did that impact on children? How did the transfer? Because like I've lost my job and I can no longer afford the good school that my child was attending before. Now I have to change school from this school now to maybe a public school, and these schools are so, they have so many children, those changes, So we are looking at those, the physiological needs. We were also looking at children believing in themselves, the self-efficacy of a child. Do they believe that they can do it? What makes a child feel like I can do this and I've got this and I can go with it and, the self-efficacy, their abilities, do they believe in them? We're also looking at their self-esteem. What do they think they are worth? And of course, like Pauline was talking about affirmation, a lot of this comes in when the parent from the early age, you're telling your child, you are worth. And your worth is not determined by your performance in school. It's not determined by maybe the kind of the height that you are or your friends, you are worth, and you are our worth. And we keep on telling children, your worth is in it. It doesn't matter what you could be going through. You could be number last in class, but your worth remained intact. And parents have to get to that point to understand that you don't show love to your child because your child is doing well in school. Every child wants to feel loved, whether you are wherever, and let them know that it is not only being number one that really makes them important people. So self-esteem was one thing we were also looking at. We were also looking at their social relations. How do they relate with people who are not, like when we talk about the social relations, there is the inner circle, the middle circle, and the outer circle. Who is in their inner circle? And we discovered that most of our children, the people who are in the inner circle are not their parents, and they are not even their siblings. There are people who are so out there because of the social media. They think the people who are out there in the social media are the people who love them because maybe waliwapatia thumbs up, those things that they do wherever, the likes and the, So the social relations, of course, were very much affected because you realize during like the time of COVID, and sometimes it continues, there were a lot of conflicts at home. People who never used to stay with their family, now they have come back because there's the lockdown. So if you're in Nairobi, you are locked there. If some jobs, the schools were closed, the teachers hadn't remained in school, the children, and they are saying they didn't even miss their teachers when they were at home for those 9 months. That tells you the relationship that the child has with the teacher is not a good one. How can you stay at home for 9 months and you didn't even feel like you never go, you never miss the teacher, you never, those are the reports that you are getting from the children. Also, of course, we looked at their morality, the issues of morality, what happened. You remember there was a lot of pregnancies and drug use, the stealing, the many things that were happening. And like, if children are out of school, parents are not in control. The children are just left all over and things really happen. So we were looking at all those things. And then one thing we have to understand, when these issues of self-esteem and social relations and the needs are not met, there is a continuum now that if the child now starts developing what we call anxiety, because these things are not being taken care of. So the anxiety comes in, and we realized and established from standard, now we were calling it grade 4, because those are the children we were really working with. From grade 4, the level of anxiety among children is so high. So high that they are wondering whether, there are so many things that are making the children very, very anxious. And we even realized that we had a number of them who are depressed. Children who are already depressed, they're in primary schools, they're in secondary schools, and others are already experiencing depression. Depression, of course, you know what comes up, you know, the hopelessness, of course, many of them had gotten into social media, and some of them were saying they regret what they were doing on social media. And of course, what they are saying, what they were doing on social media is making them not even to concentrate in school, even after the schools were reopened. So these are issues that we really need to address among the young people. And then the PTSD issues, the post-traumatic stress disorders, very many children have it. COVID, of course, affected very many of them. They lost their loved ones. Some were still crying 1 year, 2 years after this had happened. And they were having those flashbacks of dreams, you know, flashbacks, they were there. They were dreaming themselves being in a coffin and dying. And you see, some will never talk about these things until you get there and make, you know, become very good friends, and they'll tell you stories that no one has ever listened. And so we were really looking at these issues, and we realized that the psychosocial issues are not being taken seriously in our schools. And when psychosocial issues are not being taken care of, then the children are likely to now have mental health issues. And so once a child now gets to that point of the anxieties and depression and wherever, then that child can never perform. And so we were there trying to give the recommendation that these psychosocial issues, psychosocial support and mental health awareness need to be mainstreamed in our schools and in
You're muted again. You're muted, Francisca.
muted me.
Yeah.
So we were just saying the psychosocial support and mental health issues need to be mainstreamed in our schools, at homes, and in our colleges. And I think we are likely to have more healthy children who will be more, you know, they will be actually be able to thrive, functional, healthy people.
Yes.
That's where we are. Thank you.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Francisca.
just allow me to add something, just as you conclude on Francisca's, just something she said that about affirming, parents affirming their children, and of course telling them they don't love them because of their grades. We also need to mean it. You know, a child knows when you mean it and when you don't mean it, because you might say it, but then your non-verbals are also saying something different. So also a lot to be done at an individual level, as a parent. You know, are you sure it's about the interest of your child, or is it about the image? Because at times we are thinking, what if my child doesn't do well? What if my child turns out to be, you know, misbehaved? Are you thinking, is it normally so much about what will people say? You know, so at times when we have all that we are struggling with, what we say we may not really mean it. It's about other people, not about our children. So if I tell my child, even with the grades that you have close school with, like today I was speaking to a parent who was very unhappy with their child, and I said, what you'll do today and how you'll speak to that child will matter a lot to that child. So are we meaning when we say we love them and we tell them that, despite what they get, do we mean it? Our children know when we mean it and when we don't mean it. So if you don't mean it, don't say it. First deal with your inner struggles and then now tell it to them so that it is authentic.
Yeah, I think, thank you for adding that. I think it calls for us continuously working on ourselves, because there has to be a level of your own sense of healthy self-esteem for you to be able to pass that on, and that's what the child picks. I know there are many comments and many questions, and I hope that my team is putting them together, but allow me to just pull out a few here, and then I want to again just emphasize, first of all, Chris says, I wonder if there's an impact of using boy child rather than young man. Okay, I wonder if there's an impact of using boy child rather than young man, because sometimes boy child might just seem a little bit demeaning. I don't know what others think. I would open this chat up for us to have that conversation, because this word boy child is used a lot. And I'm not the expert in that space, but Chris, if also you have your thoughts, if you can unpack your thoughts a little bit and shed light in that space, because we are all here to learn, that would be great. Just back to what Francisca was talking about, one of the reasons I really invited her here is because we don't have enough research. We don't have enough documentation of these experiences that we keep talking about. So some of us are busy working, busy treating, busy bringing in interventions, but based on what? Okay, based on what? And so it's very refreshing to hear that this is actually what's happening on the ground. And what I would encourage, because a lot of us here are also researchers, are also in schools, let us really do our best to document these processes, because we will continue talking about policies that are not for us. We'll continue talking about systems that are against us. But these systems and policies are usually based on documentation. They are all usually based on research. And the more we open ourselves to just getting a lot of information as evidence, then we are able to influence policy. But in the meantime, before you get to a place of influencing policy, you and I are here and we can make a difference. And I just want to share this because I usually talk about this research here that was done by Amy Warner. If you've been in any of my sessions, I talk about it. A psychologist called Amy Warner, and she did a 40-year study. She did a 40-year study with her colleagues, and they wanted to find out what is the impact of stressful life events on children as they are growing up. Okay, what do children need to thrive? And if you want to know what children need to thrive, then you follow them over many years so that you can establish it's this, and that. And so these children grew up in spaces where there was high levels of family discord. Okay, some of the things that you have come out of the research also that Francisca was doing, family mental illness. This one is very difficult for us to establish because a lot of us Kenyans, Africans have family members with mental illness that is undiagnosed. And so we are always struggling, trying to fix them, trying to send them into institutions and removing them and trying this, sending them to aunties, sending them to prayers, but it could actually be undiagnosed mental illness. But we're not talking about that now. I'm just talking about these children over the 40-year-old study. So there was diagnosed mental illness in their family. There was family discord, a lot of disagreements between parents and even between relatives. In their space, there was a lot of discord. And there was history of substance abuse. And so as these children were growing up, during that 40-year period, Amy Warner and her colleagues followed them all the way to when they became adults. And then they looked at how they were doing much, much later on when they were adults. And what they found out is that 2 out of 3, for example, just an example, if they were following 30 children they found that 20 out of 30 ended up with behavioral issues, substance abuse, and mental health problems. All these three are directly related to the things that they were going through. Hello, that is obvious. Why? Because that is the environment that they grew up in. So that is expected. However, it wasn't 30 out of 30. There was actually 10 out of 30. A third of them ended up being competent adults, caring adults, and confident adults. Okay, and I'm sure these are some of the things we actually talked about when we were saying the outcomes we desire for our children. So there was 1 out of 3. They went through the same similar situation. And so what they wanted to find out is what was special about this 1 out of 3. What did they have across the board in common? And they realized they had 2 things. Number 1, they had strong bonds with at least one supportive, stable adult in their lives. One supportive, stable adult. And I think even when you're just hearing stories from what Mr. Cliff is telling us, from what Pauline is telling us, even from what Francisca is talking about the adults in the lives of these children that they were researching, you realize that a common thing there is there's an adult. There needs to be an adult in the lives of those children. Whatever background you're coming from, whatever values that you have, okay? But if you commit to be that stable, supportive adult, which means working on yourself first so that you can show up for that child. And then, of course, number 2 was a set of learned skills, okay? And these are skills that they learn along the way because of the spaces they are in. They just develop the resilience, they develop to be responsible, they develop to think for themselves. But even us, even though our children may not go through the same extreme circumstances that these children were going through when they were growing up, we can still provide that kind of environment for them to learn specific skills that develop their resilience. And so what they found out is that creating the perfect conditions is not the answer. So even as we are thinking about creating an environment or setting our children up for success, it's not about perfect conditions. It's about you being the one supportive adult in their lives. It's about looking in our environments, whatever environment we are in, and looking what are the low-lying fruits. How can I be more intentional? How can I use ordinary interactions to connect? Mr. Cliff is talking about just being human and saying hello to the children right from the gate. Okay, that's one of the things my son misses, the hugs and the high fives, you know. Every time that they come to school, you would meet them there, just living out low-lying fruits. So my challenge to all the adults here is what are some of the very low-lying fruits we can use to connect with the children in our spaces so that they can thrive? You know, conversations, what we are talking about here as affirmations and things like that. Activities, what are some of the activities? And let's not forget that we need community to be able to do that. We cannot do it by ourselves. So I just wanted to give an interlude there as I go back to us now, because we are agreeing that being a stable adult is important in the lives of these children. And it's not just about the nice, wonderful things that we do, but also it is in how we show up in creating an environment to discipline them. Okay, and I want us to think about that also. What does discipline look like for you, Pauline, as a homeschooling mom? What does it look like for you, Mr. Clifford, in the spaces you're in? And what does it look like for you, Francisca, at the university level? But as you think through that, I think I will just invite, I don't know if you're ready, Mr. Elijah, to read out a few of the questions.
Oh yes, thank you so much, Dr. Carol and our eminent panelists. I think some of the conversations that are ongoing are really, really profound. And I've been trying to sort of synthesize and put questions together so that they can be addressed omnibus, but let me try. I think there was, Cliff actually did admit that it was a rhetoric question that he did ask. But for me, I think that's a question in everyone's mind. Why is there a crisis in our universities? And I think that was started up by what Dr. Francisca did ask. So for me, that's a thing that we need to look at. And there's also a question that was asked by one of the participants in terms of preparing our children. How do we prepare our children for the colleges, for that transition? Because them coming from high school transitioning into colleges, it's almost a different sort of an environment. How do we prepare them for that? And I think that can be handled together with the aspect of is there a place where we see a lot of our children actually in a very difficult space, mental health issues? Should we wait for them to come to us, or is there a proactive system that can actually help us capture that before there's a crisis? So maybe those can be handled omnibus. Then we can probably look at system readiness to do with our university systems, whether it's the home environment could be doing their bit, but what about the system readiness in terms of where they go to? That can also be tackled at the same time. Back to you, Dr. Carol.
Okay, thank you, Elijah. I think I would push one question to Pauline about at what point do we really able to separate? Is this a mental health issue? Do we wait for them to come to us? What should we do? And then Mr. Cliff, you can help us understand how to prepare them for university. What are some of those things that you can do? I don't know if there's a third one, but maybe we can start with those two.
Okay. For me, when an issue is persistent, that definitely needs attention. You know, there are those things that are one-off that can be dealt with and possibly even from home or by somebody, and then the person or the child is able to go through it. But when something is seen persistently, that this child is struggling with this particular issue, then it's important for it for the child to be referred to maybe a counselor first. I always say it's good to start with a counselor before you go to a psychiatrist, because we go up, say, counselor to a psychologist to a psychiatrist, because at times we may start up there and they are medicated and they never really needed medication. They needed maybe psychosocial support, so they start with counseling. So if an issue is persistent, that's when then it can be considered maybe a mental health issue and needs attention. But if it is a one-off and maybe the triggers are known, then the person can be helped, even maybe without seeing a professional. But if it's when you realize that it's persistent, then it's important for it to be found, to be checked. Yeah.
Yeah. You were speaking to the frequency. It's happening a lot.
Yes.
Okay. What I've also seen is that nowadays, children, I've seen a lot of parents call me and tell me, my daughter said she wants to see a therapist. You have, like, this just came out of nowhere, you know? Why do they want to? I've not even seen them struggle or anything like that. And I think that's also another issue we are seeing, because we are raising children now who are very aware, who go out there and the information they find connects with how they are feeling. And they're like, I need to see a therapist. I've even had some parents. My child says, I need to see a therapist myself. So
yes.
The parents, you need to go and see a therapist. So there's also that. And I know that it's hard to draw a line between just normal conversations and what, but I think that as we continue to create awareness around mental health, which is a long-term journey, then people are able, but also we continue to build a sense of care. I know that we still that voice of influence, then also make a difference. Thank you for that. The frequency is important. Mr. Cliff, how do we prepare our children for college? And let me add, surely.
There's no one correct way of doing it, but I think what Dr. Francisca alluded to was the overprotectiveness that primary school, secondary schools have. I don't know that to say overprotectiveness or lack of gradual, should I say, transition method, right? So first, one of the things that we do at Regis is we call it job shadowing. And this has been a game changer, because when we send them 1 week to their career choice, so-called career choice. And now Form 3s will go next week. They'll be going for 1 week for their career choice. It's always a game changer. In number one, they have to dress up and appear, kind of, right? And the other time we saw Masinde Muliro University talking about dress code. Strathmore University is known for its dress code and whatever kind of thing. At the other time I was being told that Crocs are the new things and these guys don't even know how to dress, right? So number one, there has to be a transition period system. And it has to start, for me, it has to start in Form 1, right? All the way to Form 4. By the time they're reaching Form 4, they should have done 4 different job shadowing. And one of them has to be charity. So you have to be a doctor, okay? Fine, so let's take you to a hospital, okay? And it does not have to be just the major hospital, but also let's take you to all the branches of medicine. By the time you are through, you've visited all 4 different. You want to be an engineer, same thing. So the transition is not managed. We have so many people, as she correctly said, first years are confused. They are confused because no one has ever, in fact, I was talking to a boy who is he's in Form 6 now, he's doing IB. And I asked him, have you ever done any job shadowing? He said, no. But we've had people coming to talk to us about jobs, about careers. So the person who said that schools are like prison, we are still imprisoning them and bringing people to come and talk to them. Take them out, let them go, let them know, how it is to get to the job. And even tell them, listen, so some of you who don't use matatus, here is your chance to use a matatu. How do you get there? Don't just get into an Uber and then you lose all direction. So for me, the key is that job shadowing. By the time they're getting to university, right, they've already had a taste of careers. So many people who even 3rd year, 4th year university will never even get that attachment. They'll get the attachment when they're about to graduate. How does that make sense, right? We're also struggling because Regis and Kenyatta University have kind of a loose partnership, whereby they send some of the teachers, the B.Ed students, to be inducted on how to be a proper teacher in a 21st century. Carol, the gap is astounding. They come, it's like you're a 3rd year, so what have you been learning? What have they been teaching you? It's astounding. They're huge. So we're not being intentional about working with these people up to the last moment. So all the high school principals, our focus now is to get A's and get the mid-score and to appear in the newspaper and carry people and break twigs and I don't know, all those things. That's our focus. Once they've left us, we forget about them. That's wrong, So that's one. 2 is alumni bodies. So there has to be that connection between the ones who have left and the ones who are still behind. So they come back and mentor those other ones. And that's where the job shadowing comes, because it's upon the alumni to ensure that, listen, this girl wants to be an engineer. I am an engineer. Come, let's go, right? One of my former students reached out to me and said, okay, I'm going back to Strathmore University. I need to take 10 students and get them to mentor them and whatever kind of thing. I said, that's the right thing. Now get the rest of you guys to do it as well. So for me, it's that intentionality is totally missing, completely. Huge disconnect.
Absolutely. There's a huge disconnect between what it is we are expecting and what we are doing today. And I think that's why, again, the focus goes back to what seeds are we sowing today for the things that we want to see in the future, because we get, a lot of these universities being uploaded because suddenly they've come up with a dress code. But how have we prepared these children from Form 1 about that dress code, or from even the younger age? So that intentionality is very important, because a lot of the decisions we make are quite reactive. So I asked you to think about what you want to say about discipline, and I would like us to just stay on as we talk, because I know there are so many questions, and we may not be able to address all of them. However, I want to just the contacts of our let me see if I can find it, the contacts of our
Panelists.
So that we are able to get their contacts. And if we have specific questions, then we can ask those questions. We can reach out to them. So this is ours. You can connect with us on those lines. And then also, I know my team is putting the contacts there. If you would like to connect with Pauline and have a further conversation, because I can see our time is running out. So I just want to share this as we now circle back to talk about discipline. Then Francisca, you can reach out to her on that number. And Mr. Cliff, you can reach out to him on the contacts given there. And also just to remind you of a few programs that are in place for the panelists shared here. With the Kenya Guidance Counseling and Psychologist Association, tomorrow there is a conversation on alcohol and drug addiction. The link will be shared in the chat shortly, but here is the flyer for it. So you can also take a screenshot and make sure that it's 300 shillings. So be sure to connect and just hear this conversation by the Kenya Guidance, Psychological and Counselors Association. Regis School have online innovation classes for students from kindergarten to secondary from the 6th to the 17th of November. Homeless of Nairobi are running a holiday camp on the 6th. And volunteers are needed. We are talking about job shadowing. We're talking about exposing our children. This is one place. If you are in this space, then you can get in touch with Mr. Clifford and see how you can get your child to volunteer, or even you yourself to go and volunteer in the different areas of needs that they have. Then Pauline's organization or farm is called Wawera Counseling, and those are her contacts. You can reach out for individual, marriage, and family therapy on those numbers. And then Francisca also works with the SPF Mission Center in Eldoret, and they have a camp coming up in December from 3rd to 8th and from 10th to 15th, and you can also reach out to them on that. If we get time, we will talk a little bit about our programs, but I really think it's important that we talk a bit. Let's talk about this big D word, discipline, as we even wind down. And I will start with you, Francisca. What's your view on discipline? And what are some of the things you can recommend or suggest as a mental health practitioner?
Thank you. Most of us, as parents, we do not know the difference between discipline and punishment. So most of us punish children and we think we are disciplining. There are two very totally different things. Punishment is just one small aspect that we can use when we are disciplining our children, but discipline is training. You train, and it is proactive, that you do not wait until a child has made a mistake and you start disciplining the child. Actually, at that moment, you're punishing the child. So we talk about training your child. And it has to be very, very consistent. As someone had already said, it is very intentional. And the child must know what is right and what is wrong. And I know I have interacted with very many teenagers. I also go to facilitate teenage camps. And I remember some of the questions that the children would ask me, and because I would be there as a parent, is like, why do parents preach water while they drink wine? Why do they like shouting at us when you want to open up to them? Now, these are some of the questions that I may not be able to answer, but just we always say, when you even want to get to a point where you want to confront your child, check your stress levels, because if your stress levels are very high, you are likely to end up hurting the child instead of actually training the child. So be very proactive. Be actually the role model to your child, that your child can look up to you and they say, I would like to be like mom, or I would like to be like dad. That we actually teach by what we do. And of course, we know children learn more from what they see than what they are told. So if you are smoking, and then on the other hand, you're trying to tell the child that not to smoke, that is not going to work. So be the role model, lead by example in every way. And remember, we are training, not punishing our children. We are training them to be what we want them to be. And I can tell you, those children are going to be very, very strong children who knows. And of course, we always say, even our home needs to be a very safe environment for our children, that whatever the whole world has to say, I know if I have anyone to talk to, that person will be my mom or will be my dad. And we accept them just as they are, not being judgmental, and knowing that this home is a safe place for them. It doesn't matter what else happens out there. It is very, very necessary. Thank you. I think I need to stop there.
I love how, you've said discipline, but it's circled back on relationship, because there is such a misconception about discipline. And I don't want to say much because I want Pauline to speak and Clifford to speak before I do my sort of putting it together. So go ahead, Pauline. Thank you very much, Francisca.
Okay. Thank you. I support what Francisca said. So really, discipline is about training and correcting, but not inflicting pain. But of course, in discipline, there are times we inflict pain depending on the age of the child. But that is not the aim, but it's a consequence of maybe not following through the teaching that the child has been given. So that means that discipline should come after the child has been taught. So it's not the first time, it's not the second time, it's from the third time. I always say it's like in our jobs, when people are at work, they are given a first warning, a second warning, because they know the rules and regulations. Then the third time, action is taken. So we really, I mean, it's really, we should discourage ourselves or from not disciplining our children from the first time they do a mistake, because maybe they didn't know, unless it's something you have told them about. But if it's something they did not know, then give them a benefit of doubt. And also remembering that even you can do wrong. And I always say there are times we discipline by mistake. Maybe another child has said something about your child and you reprimand them. It's very important for a parent to be able to apologize to their child that what I did it wrongly. It was not you that I was meant to discipline. So that child feels honored also, because we want them to do, as like Francisca said, we don't want to say one thing yet we do the other thing. So we want them to learn how to say sorry, but when we are wrong, we don't want to say sorry to them. So it's something that we have to discipline ourselves as well. So it's about correcting and teaching, and not just inflicting pain. And of course, it depends on the ages of the children. There are times you'll use a rod, possibly if you're a believer of a rod, because they are much younger. But a time reaches where it is more of speaking. And I think we can all attest to now, or this day and age, we should speak more and listen to our children, not speak to them, but with them, even as we discipline them, so that it's not what I say. You need to hear from them first, and then what happened that you did what you did? Listen to them and then react. And then, of course, let's not remember, when we are disciplined, it's not about shouting to our children. Someone said the children are not deaf. When you find yourself shouting to your child, and of course with all due respect, because if a child is, of course, not able to hear, they use sign language. So what makes us raise our voices? We need to deal with that as parents, because we don't need to raise our voices to our children. We need to speak to our children so that we have a cordial relationship and there's no fear. Again, comes back to relationship. Yeah, that's what I would say.
Thank you. Quite comprehensive. Mr. Cliff?
Okay, thank you very much. I would concur with Pauline, actually also with Francisca. But the most important thing is also the voice. Are we listening to the voice of the children and the reasons? In 2019, we had holiday camp, the first holiday camp that we had. It was a bit of a unique camp, because what we did is we used the older youth in secondary school to help us to mentor the younger kids, kind of an older brother, sister. But now the problem, the biggest challenge in the slums is that most of the kids go to the surrounding public schools, and the mode of disciplining is by corporal punishment, physical. Everyone knows that. So the first problem we had is that whenever the kids themselves had a dispute amongst themselves, they would just confront to physical, kind of confrontation, and they would just start fighting. Now the older ones would stop them and then beat them, kind of. So we just had this system of beating, and we kept on telling them, you can't beat them. And they said, no, that's the only way they can listen. Says, no, you can't beat them. I've even talked to them. No, they just couldn't get to that aspect. However, the camp was 3 weeks. By the end of 3 weeks, something changed. And the older kids said, oh, we started listening to their story. And each time you listened, you realize that it was only half of the problem. Now, these are 16, 17-year-olds who were giving us that feedback. They started listening to the voice of the younger ones. Eventually, when you had the second cohort 2 and cohort 3, the phase of the camps much later on, the beating had stopped. Even the physical confrontation amongst the kids had stopped. Why? Because someone just listened to them. And that's what happened also in school. Nobody listens to them. The first thing, just take as a cane. So for me, it's to listen to the voice. The other one is also when the kids know that you're predictable, they know what you're going to do, they know the consequences, they're smart. So for me, at the age of, I think I was 16 or 17 in Form 3, and I got involved in a fight in school in front of the teachers, because this was a football match and the teachers were there, and then a fight ensued. And eventually I had to be told to leave and get out. When I went home, I knew the following day I'm coming back and be expelled. At most suspended, at worst. But I knew definitely fighting in school is an expulsion. However, when the two of us went to the head teacher's office, he looked at us and says, boys, that was very foolish. Right? What are you guys thinking? So we waited for the suspension, he didn't come. We waited for the expulsion, he didn't come. And back to my point number 1, be human. Because both of us had a track record. We were good students. We had never fought and whatever kind of thing. So you know the consequences, and already you've prepared yourself for the consequences. But the person who's meting out the punishment did not even give us a detention. And when we left the room, he said, kind of go and see no more kind of aspect. Right? So same thing with discipline. After you listen to the voice of the people, of the kid and everything, they're expecting you to mete out a consequence. Most likely being grounded, no going out, no ice. They know. So if you don't do it, they'll be like, oh, okay, fine. Why is she or he not particularly doing this? So the bottom line is also be unpredictable with your consequences. Thank you.
Okay, that I didn't see that coming. Be unpredictable with the consequence. I was agreeing, and I'm like, wait a minute. Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. Okay, I see what you're saying. But yes, I think this word discipline has been overused, misused, misinterpreted, and all. And we always think of just that one thing you need to do to fix behavior. But here we are talking about being models. We're talking about your tone of voice. We're talking about stepping back and saying, let me hear them out. Let them talk it all out. And in the midst of talking it all out, you can pick out the lie, you can pick out the truth, but they've been hard. And we're saying it's about learning. So you don't have to do it immediately, whatever that consequence that you are thinking of doing. But how about having a conversation? How about just throwing them off, so that they're like, oh my gosh, what was that? I need to think about it. But we are so afraid. We are so afraid. We want to maintain. We want to be clear that whatever it is that we are doing is giving us immediate results. And what I've seen is for a lot of us parents and teachers, the discipline we give is about us. It's about us feeling that we have done something. It's about us feeling a sense of relief. It has very little to do. Can you imagine what you did, Mr. Cliff, and you were told to go and sin no more? You know, it takes a stable adult. It takes us an adult who is confident about the process and about the structures they've already put in place. An adult who knows that at some point, tukombele, you know, tutampata, you know, if they need to do that. Or this child probably needs a little bit more guidance. So this child needs a little bit more encouragement here as opposed to the negative aspect of discipline. And so it's important for us. We are not saying don't inflict the things that are uncomfortable and bring displeasure to the child, because that is part of learning. But how about looking at it in totality? I think I know there are so many conversations here, and usually we finish in another 7 minutes. But are there any burning ones here, Elijah, that you would like us to have a conversation on?
No, absolutely. I think, I mean, I must really applaud the participants for very good engagement. But then there are two that probably Dr. Carol could weigh in, but the panelists could also talk about them. You know, the question about connection. And I think that's something you're very big on. How do we build connection? Not just with the parents, but even the other caregivers, the other raisers, quote unquote, in school, wherever setup where our children are operating from. And then how do you make them confident? I think those two can go together. So maybe you can mention something and the panelists can also weigh in.
Okay. And I think there's also, because I interact with the work that is done in Regis a lot, I would like Mr. Cliff for you to speak into that happy teacher space. You know, how are you ensuring there's a level of connection and happiness, happy vibes at Regis that is very attractive? How are you ensuring that full circle 360 is achieved, including the parents?
Okay. So, of course, the happiness index is something that we're very big on. And one of the things that we kind of just try to insist on is what I'd said at the beginning of being human. And sometimes when the teachers go excess and I tell them, I don't talk to you like that. So I'm not going to allow you to talk to my children like that. So that's number one. But I would like also just to kind of tie it up with the parents. And this is about showing up. Show up on the telly. So one of my show up things is that at 10 o'clock when we have the break, I go to the cafeteria to eat with the kids. Maybe I can tell you the backstory. Is when I joined Regis, the kitchen department, the cafeteria, they came to my office and told me with a list, asking me, when will I have my tea? What would I like with my tea? And whatever kind of thing. Kind of like the menu. I listened to them, and what time would you have your lunch? How do you want it? And this, no, I'm like, okay, fine. Is this a school or a hotel? Anyway, I told them, I will eat where the kids eat, what the kids eat. Says, hapana mkubwa, hakwendangi hivyo. I told them no. So show up. So when I show up at the cafeteria and I take the tea that they take, I eat the bread that they eat, and whatever they're eating, the spaghetti, I'll eat with them. And if there's a problem with the food, then in the process of eating with them, right, I listen to their stories. I am with them. Now, as a parent, just transfer it to a parent. Do you show up even during meal times, you know, kind of in this terrible age of gadgets and social media? We are just consuming. Do you show up? So if you want that connection, you have to be deliberate about it. That's number one. Number two, we've just finished a series of graduations, PP2, grade 6, standard 8, form 4. You know, it's just been a whole season of graduations. And I've seen so many parents have actually come. They've actually shown up, including the ones who are co-parenting. Now, that is something. If you want that connection, you have to show up. But if you show up, also, you have to be active. You have to be connected. So I tell the teachers as well, be connected, be active, appear. And eventually, more and more teachers are actually sitting with the kids and eating with them. And you can see now the connection. When you go to class, then you have the case of the fight and the suspension. It's because the teacher who saw us fight had connections with us. He used to come to the football pitch and train us and be with us. He had that connection. So he's not suspending a student. He's suspending Clifford, a person. So that connection has to be cultivated deliberately from the word go. And Carol, you know that as a parent, when your son was younger in kindergarten, attendance was 100%, or should I say even 150%, because you'd come with your sister and your grandmother and whatever kind of thing. By the time this guy is reaching O levels, the attendance is like 2%. He's big, you know, just like Dr. Francisca said, or the boys can sort themselves out, you know. No. I mean, the first day of university, I took my daughter to university. We went as a whole, whatever, both of them. We went. We didn't just say that, oh, just like kindergarten, even university, we went. And when you're going to visit her, we go. Why? Because the emotional status of a 3-year-old is the same as the emotional status of a 20-year-old. I want to be recognized, I want to be appreciated. It does not depreciate with age. Even a 75-year-old person wants to be acknowledged and appreciated. So if we are going to ensure that that connection is there, it starts at birth, it ends at death. It should never stop. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean that's very clear, and especially just the practicality of it, you know, sitting down and coming down to their levels. And for parents, I also encourage that that we also look for ways of connecting one-on-one with each of your children. And that's what even as teachers we can do, just one-on-one. You have 6 children, how do you connect with each one of them one-on-one over the long period of time you have with them? Some of us try to cram all of it in one and spend all that X amount of time with them, and then we stretch ourselves too much. So again, there's a level of intentionality, a level of commitment to being that one supportive adult in the lives of your children. And I think that also when it comes to building confidence, even as we wind down, let me speak into it, then I'll allow each one of us to have one last final word about this whole conversation as we wind down. I think it's already been said, you know, as you are affirming your children, you affirm them from a place of authenticity. And in our classes, we talk about the growth mindset and the fixed mindset, and we say, let's affirm process. Let's not just affirm the end product. You are smart, you got an A, but let's affirm effort. Let's affirm improvement. When we do that, then we help our children see that they actually have control over the process, and therefore they are not feeling discouraged that they didn't get the final results. And I know we can have a lot of conversation around building confidence and self-esteem, but I would like to allow our panelists to give final words just in that whole space of thriving. These conversations are like that. We leave with more questions than answers. But like I said from the start, let us pick one thing that we can use. Okay, then let's listen to this recording again and pick another and another, and reach out to these amazing panelists, because they have a lot more wisdom and richness beyond these 2 hours that we have spent together. So let me start with Dr. Francisca. What are your final words with regards to this conversation and with regards to thriving? Parting shots.
I would just say that every child has the ability to thrive. They only have to be given the right kind of environment, that is, and many times they only require a climate of respect and trust. That you can trust your child. And for me, I tell my kids, like, I trust you, and as you go out there, don't let me down. I trust you. And so when a child knows that they can find trust and they are respected, that is their views, their everything, those children, by the way, they have the very good kind of environment to be able to thrive. And so as we give this kind of environment, it has to start from home. And also we are talking also to teachers that they also give this kind of environment to the children. And by the time they get to college where we are, there will be people who really know what they are coming for. And the careers they are pursuing is their choice. They want to do this. And I think there will be people who they become actually the agents of change within the society. And I think that is what we are all striving to have from our families. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Francisca. Appreciate that. Every child has opportunity to thrive. There's goodness and greatness in each child. Pauline?
For me, I would say let us be consistent individuals and consistent parents, so that what I say is what I mean. Even when my child is doing wrong, and even when they are excelling in whatever they are doing, when they come to me, that I'm consistent. When I say that I love them, when I say that they mean so much to me, that it means that both ways. It doesn't mean that I'll be very happy with some particular actions, but I'll be consistent. They'll know I can run to mom, I can run to dad if you're a gentleman, so that they'll have a safe space in me where they can come and talk to me, that they can confide in me. So that, I mean, we have seen children getting lost even in your own home. You don't know what is happening to them because they can't imagine coming to you. Some of you, I have had my child at times tell me that, and I've had to have a meeting with myself. Mom, I feared to tell you. And I'm like, what could have happened? What could I have changed? What was happening to me that time? So it's just dealing with myself, going for personal therapy. You know, I'm a counselor, but I go for my own personal therapy because I may be going through some things that are getting into my children because I have not dealt with them. So always having a meeting with yourself, be accountable to yourself, have an accountability partner as well, somebody who can be checking up on you so that you can be consistent and as an individual and as a parent. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you, Pauline. Consistency, again, circling back to being that one stable adult, your own personal stability. And the question is, are you an askable and approachable adult in your child's life? That's a good place to, have a reflective question based on what you've shared. Mr. Cliff?
Yeah, so mine is about creating memories and magical moments. And we're very particular when the kids are young about that. So I'll just give I'll give you a short story about it. For the last almost 20 years, I've been a scriptwriter for children's drama and plays. And it started when my kids were in nursery school. So one of the things I used to do is that we'd pick a story, we'd read the story, then we'd watch the video. After watching the video, we'd sit down and now start writing the story. And then again, we'd read the book. So we kept on doing that. And from the time maybe Lisa was 3, for the next 10 years, it became like our ritual, and she would critique and give me feedback and this and whatever kind of. And what came out of it was something that totally unexpected. When she grew up to now, she's 22. Whenever she reads a book, she has to look for the movie. And then she compares the notes. Whenever she watches a movie, she has to look for the book and then compare the notes. And then she goes to YouTube and checks now the making of the movie and behind the scenes and everything. That critical aspect. Something totally I did not expect. But the funniest was, I think, when she was maybe 2 years back or 3 years back, I can't remember, when she said, now she took me out for a movie, and it was one of these Marvel movies, I think Spider-Man, and she knew I would enjoy it. And we watched the movie. Then after the movie, now when they're coming back, she started giving me the back bits of the movie and everything. And she had to look for the book as well, but there was no book about it. So the point here is that the magical moment that was created just sitting down and reading and writing and everything has kind of ballooned and blossomed into something of someone who's a critical thinker. So that question, when someone said, how do you bring up a confident child? Oh, you have to create those magical moments. You have to sit down. And yes, when they're 3, 4, 5, we read to them or they read to us. Well, what happens when they become 10? We forget about it. We say they're big. When they become teenagers, we forget about it. We don't even take them for movies because they're moody and whatever kind of thing. So that create that magical moment and be actually consistent with it. So right now, even at 22, we still watch those funny movies and some of those cartoons. Both of us are still kids at heart, but we created that magical moment. She's thriving in her own way because that moment was created. Thanks.
Thank you. And that speaks of parenting out of who you are as a person, using what we are calling low-lying fruits. You know, what is in your environment, not necessarily thinking we have to go to Diani, but because you're a creative at heart, you know, you're creating the magic moments within your environment. And I think for me, that's the charge to each one of us here as we are thinking of how to continue with the work that we are doing in creating the right environment. What is your low-lying fruit? What is in your environment? What is it that you can start doing or continue doing intentionally? And as you're doing it, you do it with a lot of presence in the moment, so that you're saying, as you're interacting with your child, you're telling yourself, this is a seed that I am sowing. This is a seed that I'm sowing. And when at 3, when they turn 22, I will see it come. But even when they're 22 and you feel you haven't sowed a seed, there is still opportunity, because as all human beings, we respond to connection. We are wired for connection. So it's never too late to start that conversation. It's never too late to create magical moments. They may not look magical at 22 or at 15, but there's still opportunity to do that. And I know we can continue talking in this conversation, but I really want to thank you, Pauline. I want to thank you, Mr. Cliff. I want to thank you, Dr. Francisca. We've gleaned so much wisdom from you. And again, I hope that we are able to take their contact so that we follow up with them at STAWI. We are just creating a platform to begin conversations. Then those conversations can continue with the many, many adults that we are bringing in this platform, because there are many people doing amazing things. So keep checking back to see who else will bring on this platform and who else will connect you with, because we are all in this together as a community. So check back on our social media pages. I would have loved to take some time to talk about our upcoming programs, but just check out what is going on our social media pages, and you'll be able to see some of the things that we are doing. And have a blessed day, evening, night, from wherever you are logging in from. And keep it STAWI as we continue having these conversations. Please let us celebrate Pauline, Francisca, and Cliff in the chat using our emoji. So we'll be on for the next few minutes so that they can be able to read the thank yous. Thank you, everyone. We're going to stop recording, and then we will keep having these conversations. Once again, thank you so much, my 3 panelists. I appreciate your time.